Let's say you've got an important decision to make. Time isn't relevant for this decision, so you're able to be a bit more free. You're able to consider all the knowledge that you might need to be able to help you make this decision. And once we've got all this knowledge in line, once it's all in place and it's all sorted, then we know how to act. It's very, very straightforward in that sense. Here's the dilemma, here's the problem, here's the knowledge that's required, here's what I'm going to do about it. But what happens if in the moment you need to make a decision? What happens if time is reduced down to just a few seconds, maybe a minute at the most? Then what do we do? But what I'd like to be able to do today in this video is introduce you to what's referred to as a spiritual exercise. It's something which is relevant in this book, which I've recommended on this channel before, Philosophy as a Way of Life. And we're going to have a look at the ancient Stoic practice of having a maxim on hand. Another way of saying that is to be able to have a rule or a saying or an aphorism that we can rely on in a situation when we're not quite sure what to do. So I'm going to be able to quote straight away from page 85 to be able to frame out this video and this topic. I'll go through the full paragraph and put particular emphasis on one element which is particularly important for the sake of this. So, the exercise of meditation allows us to be ready at the moment when the unexpected and perhaps dramatic circumstance occurs. Meditation in this case is referring to the Roman understanding of meditation rather than the maybe sitting with your legs crossed and your eyes shut meditation they might be used to. I'll talk about that perhaps another time so it doesn't get distracted from here. In this exercise called Premeditatio Malorum, we are to represent ourselves poverty, suffering, and death. We must confront life's difficulties face to face, remembering that they are not evils since they do not depend on us. This is the most important part now. This is why we must engrave striking maxims in our memory, so that when the time comes, they can help us to accept such events, which are, after all, part of the course of nature. We will thus have these maxims and sentences at hand. What we need are persuasive formulae or arguments which we can repeat to ourselves in difficult circumstances so as to check movements of fear, anger, or sadness. So as we start to look at something like this, what we're doing is we're trying to understand this idea of persuasion. We're persuading ourselves. We're going from inaction to action. And if we don't have these rules on hand, if we don't have these maxims to live by, then we're just going to be guessing. We might coincidentally be right sometimes, but we might be wrong in other times. And more importantly than that, if we want to learn why it is that we acted in a way which was correct or better or more functional, we need to be able to make that a repeatable process overall, rather than just having it as a good bit of fortune and chance. So to make this really practical, when we talk about a maxim or an aphorism, you might have heard some of these sayings before. They're generally sort of pithy statements, which they sort of fall into cliche a little bit sometimes. But if you take them seriously, some of them can actually be quite useful. So I don't know if these are going to be very British specific aphorisms, but the ones that come to mind are the squeaky wheel gets the grease. With the idea being, if you're not quite sure what to do and you think, okay, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, then what should I do? Well, I should speak up if I want to be able to get my needs met or if I need to get my voice heard. That would be a way that, rather than just seeing it as a saying, to be able to make it relevant and make it more practical. In the same way, you might say something like, you'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. The idea again being the moral is that we should act in a way which is kinder, is gentler, is good rather than bad, is positive rather than negative, because we want to catch the flies, so we want to act more, we want to use honey rather than vinegar. Again, I'm over-explaining like overused cliches here, but the more important part with all this, and this is why I'm recommending a series of books on this channel over and over again, is because as useful as this book is on its own, it really gets unlocked when you compare it with other books. So if we start to introduce another book on here, so let's say Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a very, very well-read book, a book that a lot of people might know who are watching this channel. What we can start to do is we can start to see how one book asks a question and one book solves it by providing an answer. And that's what this whole library building project is all about. So when we start to think about this idea of a maxim, of something to be able to have at hand, that we can burn into our memory over and over and over again so that it becomes obvious. We repeat this idea to ourselves and then we can act. Well, Viktor Frankl actually provides us with a fantastic one that can be used so often in so many different circumstances. So page 151 at the very top on here, he provides a very, very straightforward one, which I'll read through twice just because it is a little bit lengthy. It is this: to live as if you were living for a second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. So just to read through that again. To live as if you were living for a second time and had acted as wrongly the first time as you are about to act now. Take into account the purpose of the exercise, as it was mentioned in a book like this. It's knowing that in a moment, what is it that we should do? What are these statements that are burned into our memory that can help us to go from inaction to action? It doesn't have to be perfect action, but it has to be from inaction to action. What's the right way to be? What's a good thing to do? And if we can burn a rule like that in our mind, then it becomes clear. Okay, well, what is it that I should do? Assuming I've already gone wrong, what is it that I'd like to be able to correct about this? On a really practical level, I literally used that exact aphorism before this video. I didn't even have to check that it was on page 151. I've used this book so many times and I've burnt that into my brain now that I just know it's at the top of page 151. But it's assuming that this video has gone wrong before I've even started to record it, then what is it that would have gone wrong? What is it that I could then correct from there as well? So, for example, let's say I wanted to rush through the video itself. I want to get through everything I need to get through as quickly as possible to keep the video within a certain amount of time. Well, that's fine, but all that would happen is that I would be breathing erratically. I'd be panicked. I wouldn't be able to get my sentences out in a clear way. I'd get myself all frustrated and I'd have to re-record the video multiple times. So if I assume that as an idea in my head, and then I learn to correct that idea before it's even happened, then what that means is then that when I press record on a video like this, I'm much calmer. I'm able to allow for sentences to be imperfect. I'm allowed breaks in parts of all this. I'm allowing for silence where it's appropriate as well. Not big, lengthy periods of silence, but if there's going to have to be a second or two where I think about my thoughts and how to frame them, then that's what I can do. I can give myself that permission. But that's only because I've, in my head, assumed it has already gone wrong, corrected that, and now I'm acting as though it's the second time I've already done it. So this doesn't have to be something that you use specifically. You don't have to use that one rule, that one maxim or aphorism or anything else like that. But what is it that you could rely on? What is it that could be written down in the sake of a few words or a single sentence that you can burn into your head over and over and over again so that you can use it practically on a day-to-day basis? And that's why I'm recommending it from this book, Philosophy as a Way of Life, because I don't want this to just be an abstract idea, which is, oh, that's a really nice idea. Imagine if I actually did it, but I won't. That's what a lot of philosophy comes down to nowadays. It comes down to arguing around language and definitions and wordplay. But that's not how the Stoics understood it. It's not how the ancients overall understood it. They understood it as a way of life. And so as a result of all this, what is that one rule, that one maxim that you can live by and repeat to yourself on a day-to-day basis? I've showed you one from Viktor Frankl. If you have any more ideas and would like to be able to write them in the comment section, I'd be genuinely very interested in learning how it is that you actually navigate life, because I'd like a bank of these statements, and I'm trying to create as many of them as I can by creating this library as I'm going along. So that's how you might combine two books together, one to ask a question and one to solve it.